Hi, class. Oh, this is not great. Anyway, I'm in my backyard because it's quieter out here, but also you hear the birds. Also, I got some blue light glasses, and they're a little big for my face, but they help my eyes see better, so. Because it's kind of hard to look at a computer all day. Anyway, so here we are. Today we're talking about discernment. So a lot of you guys don't really know what discernment is, kind of, or like I could tell you, or like maybe Googled it and then wrote it down. But yeah, we also have this question with vocation of like, how do I know what God is calling me to do? How do I know what He wants for my life? How do you hear God? How do we hear Him speaking to us? That kind of thing. So we're going to kind of talk generally about discernment, give some practicals, but then I'll also probably have you watch a video by Father Mike Schmitz that also gives some really good practicals for you to learn about discernment and to discern yourselves. But yeah, so encountering God. So discernment is just kind of a part of this. But like, especially with our vocation and prayer, we're like trying to communicate with God, right? We're trying to talk to God. We want to know what He thinks. We want to know what His will is, all that kind of stuff. And like I said in one of the last lectures about that passage from the Catechism of how the desire for God is written on the human heart. So yeah, we desire at the deepest part of us to encounter God, and God created us to love and to be loved by Him. But He also created this world around us for us to be able to encounter Him as well. So yeah, we can encounter God in pretty much anything. All of creation points to God. There's some really cool theology of the body stuff that I'm sure I think they'll probably teach you in high school, of that just kind of talks about all of this, ties it all in to like how all of creation points to God, points to communion, points to the Eucharist, all of these different things. But we can see like God has been telling this story of how He loves us over and over and over again throughout all of time. So yeah, He can use anything to communicate to us. Sometimes He uses the book called the Bible. Sometimes He uses the beautiful birds that are singing to me right now. Sometimes He uses a family member, like having a good conversation with you. There's lots of different ways that we can encounter the Lord. But it's important to be able to know, are these things that we're experiencing, are these things that we are hearing, is that the voice of God? Is that our own thoughts? Or is that like the evil one trying to play a trick on us? So kind of like making sense of all of this and then also like taking action on it is discernment. So basically, yeah, discernment is taking action on what God communicates to us. It's kind of like, yeah, to judge rightly, I think is what some of you guys put as a definition for discernment. Yeah, like to be able to take something, to sort it out, and then to take action, to judge, in a sense. Yeah, like what your next move is, what the next action point is. So I'm going to tell you about a saint, and I kind of took how we're going to learn about discernment from this saint. There's other saints that I'm sure have talked about discernment. This is just one that I've learned about, and I think he's great. So Saint Ignatius of Loyola, he was a young boy. I think he had 13 siblings, or he was one of 13, which is a lot. His mother died when he was very young. His mother died. So that was kind of sad. But throughout his life, he was like, oh, I want to be a general. I want to go into battle. I want to be a good soldier, all of that stuff. And so like that's what he set out to do. Here you can see his picture is he's in a suit of armor sort of thing. So yeah, he wanted to be a soldier. Like that was his goal and aspiration in life. That is what he thought would make him happy. That is what he set out to do. He wanted to dedicate his life to that. And then I think he got hit by a cannon or something like that. Somehow his leg got very badly injured. Yeah, and I feel like I've heard people tell the story of like he was also like a pretty like attractive young man and stuff like that. And so he like broke his leg and then it healed, but it was like still crooked. So he had the doctors re-break it so it could re-heal so it would be straight because he like cared about what it looked like. Anyway, so long story short, he was in the hospital for a very long time, okay? And he didn't have much to do. It was like I don't even know. Maybe the 1800s. I should have looked it up. I didn't write it down. But there's really not much to do when you're there. And yeah, so he basically could read books. So some days he would read books about war and generals and those kind of things. And other days he would read about the lives of the saints or the life of Jesus. Is that what it was? Yes, the life of Christ. Yeah, and when you're kind of just sitting doing nothing, you may have experienced this in quarantine, you kind of just, you think a lot. You think a lot. And St. Ignatius, he was like, I can read and I can think, and that's about it because my leg is broken and there's not much else for me to do. Anyway, so he gets to thinking about it and he realizes that when he's reading about war, it's something that he loves. He likes it a lot. It gets him really excited. But then that happiness only lasts for a little bit. So it like brings him joy. It brings him delight. But then it quickly fades. It quickly fades. It doesn't bring him lasting happiness to read about this because it would kind of just remind him of like, yeah, I probably don't get to do that again because my leg is definitely like very broken. All of these things of like, yeah, like I can't go to war. I can't fulfill that purpose in my life. But then he realized that when he would read the lives of the saints, he might not necessarily find quite as much delight in the initial moment when reading those things, but he found his thoughts so often returning to those things and that he was like comforted and consoled by those things, and those brought him lasting happiness, longer happiness. And he noticed this difference. And so there's this quote that I wrote down because I just like it. But yeah, his eyes were open just a little to the spiritual realities that were occurring in him, and he like didn't really know. So he kind of came up with these things. Okay, what did it? Yep. So the reading the life of Christ and the life of saints brought him lasting peace, happiness, consolation. Other things like reading about war, battles, generals did not. So yeah, basically, like I said earlier, we are all called to relationship with God. And St. Ignatius realized this. He realized there is something more here. He realized that he had encountered God through reading these books. And that was like what he actually desired and like what actually would fulfill him. So then based on this like reflection that he had, he came up with rules for discernment. And there's actually 14 rules. We're not going to go over all 14 because I, even as a college student, have gone over the 14 rules like 2 or 3 summers in a row, and I still need to go back and revisit them all the time because I don't remember them. They're kind of hard to understand, but they're so good. Anyway, but we're going to go over the basic principles. So the basics: be aware, understand, and take action. Wow, it's getting really dark. I'm going to see if I can turn on the light. Give me a second. Okay, this is much better. Also, look at the pretty background. Isn't it so nice? Okay. The Lord is good. So the basics: be aware, understand, and take action. Okay? We're going to dive into these. So being aware. So in our lives. So what St. Ignatius experienced was affections. So like, I'm going to break it down very basically. It is a little more complex than this, but kind of like what he was like thinking and feeling and what arose in him after a certain experience. So when he would read about war, he would have an affection of like, oh, I like this. This is what I want to do with my life. That kind of stuff, right? But that affection did not last. It did not have very much longevity. He realized that he was like tired or fatigued afterwards. Like he would, 2 hours later, he would just be like sad and tired and realize, my leg is very broken and I can't do that. Bummer, right? But the affection he experienced when he read the life of Christ or the life of the saints was lasting. It brought him greater peace throughout the day. When he would think back to it, it would bring him joy or these different other thoughts, feelings. So the Lord wants us, like, our bodies, our minds, our emotions are all a gift that the Lord gave us, okay? They are all a gift that the Lord gave us, okay? Don't let anyone tell you that they're not a gift, okay? That's why with, like, modesty, we wear certain clothes because our bodies are a gift. Emotionally, like, that is also a gift too of, like, when we see a cute video of a puppy, sometimes we cry because we feel things, and that's, like, so good. And all of these things are a gift from God, and they can point us back to God. So we kind of just should be aware of what's going on in ourselves. How are we, like, doing emotionally? Did my mom say something nice to me and that made me, like, emotional? Physically, spiritually, morally, like, what's going on? What is happening within us? I should have thought of an example beforehand. I guess sometimes. This was when I was home for Easter, I watched a lot more TV with my family. And I realized that when certain commercials would come on about COVID-19, I would get a little emotional. Like, I would start to tear up. I would never cry, but I would start to tear up. And that was an affection. That was something that rose in me. So that was, like, kind of like an uncomfortable feeling because, like, no one really, like, wants to cry, of, like, I was kind of like, oh, why am I sad? Like, why does this make me feel this way that I want to cry? But I was aware of that, okay? Because then I could go and pray with it and I could say, Lord, like, why do I feel this way about COVID? Like, why do these commercials elicit in me this feeling? And then that led me to pray about how grateful I am for healthcare workers and grocery store workers and all of these people that are helping each other. And also, the great acts of generosity that people have been doing throughout this time where a lot of people are struggling. So, like, when I hear that Pizza Hut or somebody is, like, giving away lots of pizzas, like, that makes me cry because I'm so grateful that somebody has the ability to be that generous and they're choosing to be that generous. That's all, like, an affection that I became aware of, and then I was able to, like, communicate with God about and say, Lord, like, what a gift it is that people are generous. And then it compelled me to want to be more generous. How can I give my time? How can I do something that will help? And then I ended up making some masks. So that's just, like, one example. So it's important to kind of, like, be aware what's going on in my little heart. Like, what's going on in my little mind? What are these different things? So it's important to, like, be aware of these things. So it's so much easier to just be numb and to not pay attention. It is easier to be unaware, distracted, noisy, than to have discipline of attention. So it's so much easier to go and watch a bunch of YouTube videos and to, like, not think about things and not go pray. And, like, those things aren't bad, but also, like, we're called to greatness and we're called to live a life with Christ, to be in communion with God. And that's what will actually bring us happiness. But it's definitely a lot harder of a road than being numb, not paying attention to what we are thinking and feeling. This was a really good quote, and I think I've heard it quoted many times since COVID started because I think a lot of people are wrestling with this and dealing with this. But I'm pretty sure this was St. Ignatius, or maybe it was the priest that wrote this book about St. Ignatius that I kind of got a lot of this information from. I've often said the sole cause of man's unhappiness is that he does not know how to stay quietly in his own room. It's hard to, like, be aware of our thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires, all of those things. Because sometimes they're wonderful and you're so happy and it's so great. But also sometimes it's like not comfortable and you might be sad or disappointed. Yeah, and those just like aren't great emotions that we want to feel all the time. But the Lord wants to use them and He wants to work through them, which is such a great gift. He uses everything. He can use anything, which is wild. So yeah, we need to be able to be quiet to notice like what is going on inside, what is happening within me. Okay? Next, we go to understand. This one is a little tricky, but then we need to understand what does it mean to reflect and realize. So in my example that I gave earlier, the affection was that I would almost cry when I was watching COVID-19 commercials on TV. My understanding was when I sat down and thought about it and I said, why do I feel this way? Like, what does it mean? And then I realized that I was very moved by the fact that people were being generous. I was moved by the fact that people were risking their lives for other people. And I was just very touched by that. And so that was like me reflecting upon that experience and realizing what was actually going on. Okay? So it's kind of just like, reflecting, and also reflecting like, is this something that is of God or is this something that is not of God? Okay? So is it bringing me like peace and consolation? Is it truth? Or is it bringing me like fear, anxiety, doubt? Is it not of the Lord? So kind of just like being able to look at those things and sort through those things. Basically, the question is this bringing me closer to God or not? So that's one very basic way to think about it, but sometimes that's harder to look at than we think. But is this bringing me closer to God or further away? The third step is to take action. So is this of God or not? So that was kind of in understand, you're trying to work through that. So you have to decide whether to accept or reject. So if I would have thought about my tears and thought about, oh, I'm actually very afraid of COVID and I'm actually very afraid for my family or my brother that works at the grocery store or all of these things, then that would have been something of like, this isn't bringing me peace. This isn't bringing me joy. And like, it's reasonable to be afraid, but then also to call upon the Lord and ask for greater trust of like, Lord, like, I know this is scary, but I want to trust in you. So that's kind of like discerning, like, is this something that is good or not? Is this God or is this not God? And we have to decide what we're going to do with that thing. So are we going to accept it as truth or are we going to reject it? Okay, so that's kind of the basics of discernment. There's a lot of other ways that you can break it down. I think I'm going to have you guys watch a Father Mike Schmidt's video that is excellent about like just the practicals of like, how do you discern? How do you make sure you don't like miss your vocation? All of those things. So I think that'll answer some of your guys' questions on that. But if not, I'm very happy to answer more questions. I think that's going to wrap it up. We will probably talk about discernment more. Gosh, this is long. I'm sorry. Have a great one, guys.